When I married Arman Malik, I chose love over luxury. I never told him I was the CEO of a multinational tech corporation. I never mentioned the boardrooms where men twice my age waited for my approval. I never told him that the penthouse we lived in was partly paid for by quiet transfers from my private account. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for my title, so I let him believe I was just a small consultant working remotely. For 3 years, I played the role of the supportive wife. I woke early to prepare his coffee exactly the way he liked it, no sugar, a drop of almond milk. I attended his startup networking events, smiling politely while he introduced me as my wife. She works from home. He never once asked what I actually did. At first, I thought it didn't matter, but slowly, small cracks began to appear. Whenever I offered advice about his struggling company, he would laugh softly. "You wouldn't understand, Maya. Business is brutal. It's not your world. Not my world." I stayed silent, not because I agreed, but because I loved him. The night everything ended, the air felt heavier than usual. Arman stormed into the apartment, his face red with frustration. His startup had officially collapsed. Investors had withdrawn. The final deal he'd been chasing had failed. He threw his laptop bag onto the couch. "It's over," he muttered. I stepped closer. "We'll figure it out. Failure doesn't define you." He turned toward me, eyes blazing. "Failure? You think you understand failure?" I blinked at the venom in his voice. "You sit at home pretending to work while I fight in the real world." Pretending. The word pierced deeper than I expected. "I'm not pretending," I said quietly. He laughed bitterly. "Please, you're too soft for real business. Too foolish. Foolish." 3 years of swallowed pride trembled inside my chest, but I refused to cry. Then he said the words that shattered everything. "I don't need dead weight dragging me down. If you can't contribute, then leave." Silence filled the room. I searched his face, hoping for regret, hoping this was anger speaking, not truth. But there was no hesitation in his eyes, so I walked to our bedroom calmly. I packed one suitcase, just essentials. My hands were steady, but my heart felt like glass cracking in slow motion. When I passed him at the door, he didn't stop me. Outside, the cold night air wrapped around me. I looked back at the building, at the life I had built in silence. He called me foolish. He told me to leave. He had no idea what he had just thrown away. And as the elevator doors closed, I made a quiet promise to myself. Tomorrow, he would learn exactly who I am. The next morning, I did not allow myself to cry. Instead, I woke before sunrise in the quiet hotel suite I had booked overnight. The city skyline stretched outside the window, glowing faintly beneath the early light. I stood there for a long moment, letting the pain settle into something colder, something sharper. Then I stepped into the shower, washed away the smell of last night's heartbreak, and put on the navy power suit I hadn't worn in months. By 8:45 a.m., I was walking into the glass headquarters of Zenith Global. The moment I entered, the security staff straightened. "Good morning, MS Raman." Respect. It felt unfamiliar after years of shrinking myself at home. The elevator doors opened directly to the executive floor. My assistant hurried toward me, tablet in hand. "The board is waiting, ma'am. Also, the acquisition finalized at midnight." "Good," I replied calmly. Inside the boardroom, 12 directors rose to their feet as I entered. On the large screen behind them was a logo I knew far too well. Malik Innovations, Arman's company. Last night, while he was telling me to leave, Zenith Global finalized the majority acquisition of his failing startup. 60% controlling shares. His investors had been desperate. They sold quietly. I took my seat at the head of the table. "Our objective," I began, my voice steady, "is to restructure and rebuild the company under disciplined leadership." A director cleared his throat. What about the current CEO, Arman Malik? For a brief second, I saw his face in my mind, angry, dismissive, certain I was foolish. We will review his performance personally, I said. By noon, an official email was sent requesting his presence at headquarters for an emergency executive evaluation. He had no idea who he was about to face. The following afternoon, I watched through the tinted glass wall as Arman stepped into the lobby. He looked exhausted, but his posture still carried pride. He adjusted his tie before following my assistant toward the boardroom. When he entered, he didn't look at me immediately. His focus was on the directors. Then I spoke. "Mr. Malik, please have a seat." The sound of my voice froze him mid-step. His head lifted slowly. Shock drained the color from his face. "Maya," I held his gaze evenly. "Yes." His eyes moved to the plaque in front of me. "Chief Executive Officer, you're the CEO." He whispered, "For 7 years." I replied calmly. Silence pressed against the walls. In that moment, he didn't look angry. He looked small, and for the first time in our marriage, he understood exactly who he had called foolish. The silence in the boardroom felt heavier than any argument we had ever had at home. Arman remained standing for a moment, staring at me as if the ground beneath him had shifted. The confident man who once dismissed my opinions now looked uncertain, almost fragile. "You knew?" he asked quietly. "You knew about the acquisition. I approved it," I replied. A flicker of humiliation crossed his face. Around us, the board members watched carefully, sensing history between us, but professional enough not to interfere. We proceeded with the review. The financial reports were projected onto the screen, declining revenue curves, reckless investments, poorly negotiated contracts. Each red figure told a story of rushed decisions and wounded pride. "Your expansion into 3 cities simultaneously was high risk," I said evenly. "You ignored your advisors." He swallowed. "I believed in growth." "Belief without structure is gambling," I answered. Months ago, he would have argued. He would have cut me off. Today, he listened. After the meeting, the board voted in alignment with my recommendation. Arman would remain in the company, but no longer as CEO. He would serve as operations manager under direct supervision. I stepped down, a sharp one. When the decision was announced, his jaw tightened. Pride battled reality inside his eyes. "You're demoting me," he said once the room emptied. "I'm giving you a chance to rebuild." I corrected. He let out a slow breath. "You could have fired me." "Yes," I said honestly, "I could have." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us wasn't filled with anger anymore. It was filled with consequences. Over the next few weeks, Arman reported to meetings on time. He submitted revised proposals. He stayed late not as the man giving orders, but as the man taking them. Whispers spread quietly through the company. Some employees knew about our marriage, others only sensed tension, but I never allowed disrespect. In every meeting, I addressed him formally. "Mr. Malik, your analysis." And he responded just as formally. "Ms. Rahman." One evening, long after most employees had left, he knocked on my office door. "May I come in?" I nodded. He stepped inside, no arrogance left in his posture. I was insecure. He admitted, voice low. "You were calm, intelligent, composed. I felt like I was always trying to prove myself. Instead of growing, I tried to make you smaller." The honesty caught me off guard. "You didn't just try," I said softly. "You succeeded." His eyes filled with regret. "I didn't know who you were." He whispered, "That wasn't the problem." I replied, "You didn't value who I was even when you thought I was ordinary." The truth lingered between us. He hadn't just lost a title. He had lost the woman who would have stood beside him through every storm, and now, the only way forward for him was to start from the very bottom. 6 months had passed since Arman Malik had walked into Zenith Global, unaware that the woman he had called foolish was now the CEO overseeing his every move. In that time, I had watched him transform not completely, but enough to see humility replace arrogance, caution replace impulsiveness, and respect slowly growing where contempt once resided. Under my guidance, his startup stabilized. He learned to listen, to follow rules, to collaborate. He made mistakes, of course, but each one taught him a lesson. And while I could have enjoyed the thrill of watching him fail spectacularly, I had a different kind of satisfaction in mind, one far sweeter than public humiliation. My revenge was never about cruelty, it was about truth. One evening, after the office had emptied, Arman knocked on my office door. His posture was hesitant, careful. He stepped inside and placed a folder on my desk. "Divorce papers," he said quietly, almost ashamed. I don't want to hold you back anymore. You deserve a life where someone respects you fully. I realize now that I never did." I studied him. His eyes were honest, contrite, vulnerable in a way I had never seen. My chest tightened not with anger, but with the memory of every insult, every dismissive word, every moment I had been made to feel small. "I don't hate you," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But I won't shrink for anyone again. That's the only way forward." He nodded, folding the folder carefully. "I'm sorry for everything," he murmured, "and I mean it." The papers signed, the separation formalized, I realized something profound. My revenge had never been about taking him down or claiming his empire. It had been about standing tall, about claiming my own strength and refusing to let anyone diminish it. Years later, people called me powerful. They praised my business acumen, my leadership, my poise. They didn't know that my power wasn't born from ambition alone. It had been forged in betrayal, strengthened by heartbreak, and perfected through quiet, calculated truth. Arman Malik occasionally speaks to those who knew him before, telling them one lesson he learned the hard way: never underestimate the woman who stays silent. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who owns the building. I walk through life now without fear of disrespect, without a need for validation from anyone who cannot see my worth. I've built my empire, yes, but the sweetest part isn't the company, the title, or the accolades. The sweetest part is knowing that the man who once called me foolish, who told me to leave, now carries a memory of what real strength looks like. And that memory is my revenge, because true power is not in vengeance. It is in rising, in flourishing, and in becoming untouchable in dignity. He may have thought he broke me that night, but in truth, he only created the woman who would never be underestimated again.